Hello and welcome to the 21st Century Work-Life podcast, where we talk about leading remote teams, online collaboration, and working in distributed organizations. This podcast is brought to you by Virtual Not Distant, where we help managers and teams transition to an office-optional approach. Find out everything we do over at virtualnotdistant.com and check out our show notes and pictures of our lovely guests over on the podcast page. It's great to have you here, listeners. Let's get on with the show. Hello and welcome to a bonus episode of the 21st Century Work-Life podcast. I am delighted to have on the show someone who is actually at the moment going through transitioning how they used to work before the pandemic to a new way of working under the title hybrid. So I'm delighted to have with us David Stoddard. He is the CEO and partner of Barnett Waddingham. Hello, David.
Hi, Pilla. How are you?
Well, I am really good, and I am really looking forward to hearing more about how you are transitioning at your company. Of course, we've spoken before, and I'm going to ask you to tell us first, what do you do at your company?
Just before that, I just want to say a huge thank you for, firstly, the invitation today and the opportunity to speak to you and your listeners, but secondly, all the fantastic work you've been doing for quite some time now, well over 300 episodes of this. You've shared a lot of knowledge to a lot of people, and it's been hugely valued. So I just wanted to say a big thank you before we get into the main bulk of today, if that's okay.
Yes, I love to hear from listeners. I love to have listeners on the show. That is this is my dream, to have the people who are listening also being the people who give back as well. So thank you. Yes, tell us a little bit about maybe what does your company do, and then what you do in your company.
Absolutely. Very happy to. So we're a leading independent UK-based professional services consultancy at the forefront of risk, pensions, investment and insurance. We've got nearly 1,500 people now in our company, amazingly, and just under 100 partners. And we serve our clients. And to do that, we recruit the best possible people we can, create the environment, the empowerment and the conditions for people to perform at their very best. We've been doing that now very successfully for the last 33 years, and we've grown every single year, even during the pandemic, which is quite some feat when you look at some of the real challenges a number of organizations have had. So That's a little bit about who we are and what we do.
And I have to say that I was looking through your website, which, by the way, I found highly personal or personable. I think personal is probably the right word. Like, I really felt I understood I really understood the ethos. I think some of the page, certainly your page has an embedded link to an interview you've done. I don't know, it had that extra layer that I rarely come across when I go into a company. I'll read straight from your website so I don't get anything wrong. For the second time running, you've been accredited with a 2-star rating by Best Companies, demonstrating outstanding levels of workplace engagement. And you were also ranked 34th in the best large companies to work for national listing. So again, it's just a testament to you that it's not just you telling us you're leading, but actually there is something here that's very special and that you have been paying a lot of attention to for years. So no wonder you're here telling us how you are going to be moving forward. And what do you do at the company then, David?
I'm the Chief Operating Officer, so I'm one of we are a partnership, so we have, as I say, just under 100 partners. Mm-hmm. And each partner has different leadership roles within the organization. So within my role, I lead all the non-client facing areas within the business, so HR and finance and governance and all the facilities, but also lead the transformation across the business, of which hybrid working and what we call work smart is one of the big themes we've been focused on over the last couple of years or so ago. So I'm going to hopefully bring that to life for your listeners this afternoon.
Excellent. Well, let's do it. So tell us a little bit more. We've got an idea of the number of people, but tell us a little bit more about the context. So we've heard about the type of business. What about your locations, and also how much before the pandemic was remote work or working from home part of your culture or not?
So we've got 2 years ago, we had 8 physical locations. We now have 9. offices based right across the UK, ranging from London to Glasgow and lots of other great places in between. Historically, and it's a very good question, historically the organisation has really operated around the centre of offices, and people have come to work in the offices as being the place of work, but also the place where individuals can connect with others, they can learn with others, they can grow with others, they can build those social relationships, can coach others, can be creative together, can collaborate together. So the office has been very much the hub of the way we've worked. That said, a number of our client-facing teams are distributed across our footprint of offices. And prior to the pandemic, we had been undergoing a program of rolling out laptops right across the organisation, so everyone has one, because more and more we were seeing that people from time to time were speaking with their colleagues in different offices and connecting that way. It's just that the pandemic, as many organisations have learned, rapidly accelerated that transition from predominantly office-based working to overnight exclusively home-based working, apart from all our wonderful key and essential workers who kept things going during the most difficult of times back in 2020.
Yeah. And so that was then, and then as as the lockdown started to ease and as everyone started to think, okay, it seems like we now are getting out of this thing, whatever that was. I remember I spoke to you about that, and you were in the process of talking to your people already and starting to design, okay, which might be the way forward. What kind of conversations did you have with your team and with the other people who were starting to design? So even before you surveyed your employees, what are the kind of conversations you were having with the team that was going to be on board to design the new way of working?
We'd started to think about more hybrid working prior to the pandemic, but there were a number of areas in the business that thought it wouldn't be possible to serve clients in the best possible way, working away from the offices. That was the belief at the time within certain pockets of the organisation. I think when we were forced to make it work in kind of April, May time 2020, that changed perceptions because people realised that actually you could make things work. And so what we began to do from kind of the back end of 2020 onwards was we began to think, actually, could we use what has been a terrible time and continues to be a terrible global pandemic, but could we almost use it as an opportunity to think about how we want to, as an organisation, work in the future? And that's not just to get through 2021, 22. What we've designed, we believe, is something that will stand the test of time. And we're very much firmly committed now as an organisation to hybrid working, which will involve, and I can come and talk about the details a little later, but we see there are benefits of bringing people together, and we see there's benefits of people working more individualistically. And it's about bringing together the best of those so people can work in the ways and the locations that's best for those individuals to be at their best, and also best for our clients, which is incredibly important as well. So that's the balance we're really trying to strike. But very specifically, once again, it was about seeing that opportunity to build something sustainable, something for the future that will endure long beyond the pandemic.
And if I remember correctly, then you surveyed your people, didn't you? What kind of questions, what kind of things were you trying to find out?
Yeah, absolutely. So there was kind of two sets of surveys we did, Pillar. One was a regular pulse check, if you like, of our people throughout the pandemic, because clearly it was a very concerning time for all of us, wasn't it? It was forcing us into work in different ways. We lost that social connection with our colleagues. We had to find new ways of doing things. And we wanted to very much keep a finger on the pulse, given how important our people and our culture are to our organisation. We wanted to keep a finger on the pulse of how people were feeling, what were people's concerns, what was working well, what wasn't working well. And that was very much that pulse survey, that regular set of surveys we sent out to really check in with our colleagues and make sure that people were doing okay, and if they weren't, what central support we could provide. But later on, once we'd thought a little bit more about what the Work Smart framework might be, and we designed something centrally, which once again we believed was designed very much with clients in mind, with our colleagues in mind, and with our culture in mind, and creating the best solution for the future. We actually sent that draft framework to, in fact, all of our colleagues and employees right across the organisation, and asked them for their feedback on the draft that we'd pulled together. And that was hugely powerful because there was all sorts of interesting
Yes.
learnings that came out of a survey. And we had well over 80% response rate. So it was a survey that was incredibly well reacted to.
Yes.
And we gained some real critical insights, which really helped shape the framework and improve the framework, which we've now settled on as that kind of ways of working for the future.
Great. And is there anything that you can share from what you found out that either surprised you or confirmed, just one or two things that you'd like to share with listeners? Because I'm wondering, with so many people and such huge engagement with the survey, you must have had all kinds of surprises as well.
There were. I mean, there were some things which confirmed some of our thinking. So, for instance, there was definitely confirmation that people saw the benefits of working together. So I think that was a really important anchor point. People had also really welcomed the benefits of having more time working individually in a focused way, and the work-life balance benefits that the pandemic had afforded people the chance to try. And so striking the balance between those two was something we needed to think about quite carefully. What also resonated and rung home from the feedback is clearly everyone had their own unique circumstances and their own individual experiences throughout the course of the pandemic, but equally prior to the pandemic. So everyone had a slightly different view of what the best of the ways of working before the pandemic were and the best of the ways of working during the pandemic. So we had to try and bring all of that thinking in. And then probably lastly, I mean, there were some real surprises and shocks that popped out when we surveyed everyone, things we just hadn't preempted. So, for instance, a number of our colleagues had, as an example, got new pets during the course of the pandemic. And so there was a slight fear that they'd have to leave their pets for the first time. And that, I don't know whether it was pet anxiety or owner anxiety of having to leave their pets for the first time. But that was a genuine thing for people, because at that point in time, some people had worked from home pretty exclusively for 12 months or more. And so that transition back to a new way of working wasn't going back to the way you worked previously. It wasn't sticking with where we were now, but it was very much a conscious, let's move towards a better place that works for everyone.
Yeah, I love that. And that recognition that we were also engaging with work differently before the pandemic. And then the experience during the pandemic was different. And so that transition moving forward. So, I love that. And I just want to highlight something you said about thinking about when you're starting to design and your new ways of working, thinking about your colleagues, clients, and culture. I don't know. I really love those 3 points. Just for me, from some of the stuff I was reading, the Work Smart framework that you've come up with, is this something that you were already working on before the pandemic?
There was some high-level thinking being done prior to the pandemic that said, perhaps at a point in the future, some areas of our business might be able to work in more of a flexible way.
Yeah.
But it was kind of at that level of thinking. As I say, the pandemic really accelerated that thinking. And over the course of the last 2 years, we've come up with what is now a central framework, but recognizing that each part of our business is very different. So we have some client-facing teams who are very dispersed over different locations. We have some client teams who lend themselves more to office-based, collaborative, face-to-face working more of the time. We have other teams who appear on the surface, so if you take our IT development team as an example, to be actually more engaged and more productive, spending slightly more time working individually. Mm-hmm. So we recognize that even though we came up with a central concept or framework, that would require local interpretation in different parts of our business. And what we've done is we ran that central survey I mentioned when we asked everyone their feedback. We then refined the framework. We then shared that back with all the different business areas, but actually ran focus groups within each business area that said,
Right.
how's this best going to work given your unique circumstances, given the unique needs of your clients, given the unique needs of your colleagues and that was very powerful, so that we weren't slavishly sticking to a set of central rules, if you like. We were very much using that, as I say, we use the words framework advisedly because that's what it is, but we were interpreting that locally. And the final piece we did, which was really powerful, was not only did we survey our colleagues, and I mentioned the pulse surveys, the kind of regular finger on the pulse, but also that broader design survey. We also actually did a survey with our clients where we sought
Wonderful.
their feedback on how had the experience been for our clients, had our service got better, had it got worse, what elements had been improved, what had been some of the challenges to work through. And that was equally hugely invaluable in refining the framework, because this was very much coming back to where I started. The intention of this was at that point in time and continues to be, let's create the best framework that's fit for the future, that allows us to serve our clients in the best possible way, and also create the best environment and culture for our colleagues to thrive in order to build those long-term relationships with their clients. So that's been the whole philosophy throughout, and all of that feedback's really improved the initial thinking that was done centrally.
I've got to ask you about the same question as I asked you about your people, about your clients. What is there anything that you can share with us generally about some of what their experience had been, or anything that either confirmed some of the things you were thinking about in moving forwards, or that you changed your mind and thought, oh, we weren't expecting this, we've got to rethink this? Was there anything about those conversations with the clients you can share?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it was really interesting. We often talk about clients and colleagues as two different stakeholder groups because they are, but actually a lot of the interests were very common between the two. So a lot of the feedback was quite consistent. That actually many of our clients said, look, from time to time, it's great to get together in person. So it might be every 3 months, it might be every 6 months, it might be every 12 months, depending on the client and their unique needs. In the early stages of a client relationship building exercise, and when the client's trying to get to know you and you're trying to get to know your client, actually perhaps some more face-to-face time is a good investment to make. But actually, when you've known a client and worked with them very well for many years, and you trust each other and you've got that rapport and the ways of working, perhaps getting together physically less frequently than had been the norm. So not every month if you've got a monthly meeting, or not every week necessarily. I think that really resonated with us. We also found, similarly with our colleagues, that all clients were in slightly different positions, perspectives, and of course, whilst we had our own learnings on technology and how to run good meetings virtually and how to run good hybrid meetings, and I must say we don't have all the answers. We're still on that learning journey on that and many other topics. Our clients were still in the same, were also in that similar place. And so it actually gave us the opportunity with some clients to share some of our internal learnings, which was really powerful, actually. So I think that was the other thing, recognizing that everyone is on a learning journey still. And actually, you can all learn something from each other and equally share good practices and some of the things which perhaps haven't gone quite as you'd planned, to work collectively to get to a better place.
What a great opportunity also to strengthen your relationship with your clients through this process as well. Fantastic. Let me go back to my notes because I've already derailed. So let's go into a little bit more detail then about the Work Smart framework and some of the principles. You mentioned, for example, when I was talking to you about having the office as a proxy for collaborative working. So that's one example. Can you talk a bit more about that, and then give us a few other things that you are in your overall framework looking at?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think if we again focus on the intention of the framework, the intention is to create a framework that's best for clients, best for colleagues, best for our culture. And what we recognise is that some activities we believe, and this is one of the beliefs which sits behind the framework, some activities we think are better done face to face, and some things are easier done for us based on our history and our heritage and our skill set. I'm not saying this is right for everyone, but for us, based on our history and our heritage, are better done face to face. And forming those really strong connections with the organisation as an example, and those social connections with your colleagues. Equally, particularly, we've recruited a few hundred new people since the start of the pandemic. For them to feel connected to a bigger organisation and connected to the culture and to feel the culture, that's much more easily done when you're actually immersed in an experience together with other colleagues, rather than perhaps when you're dialing into a Teams call or a Fuse call or a Zoom call, or whatever else it might be. We find that we have lots of relatively junior people who are early in their careers who join us. So we have apprentices and graduates. And for those colleagues to learn through osmosis, just by sometimes overhearing how more experienced people handle certain different situations, is hugely powerful. But equally, if you're coaching or mentoring someone, sometimes having those conversations are just much richer when they're face to face. On the other hand, we recognise that there are some activities when you just need to get your head down and get stuff done, and that might be study time, or it might be client-based work, it might be internally focused work, where you just need quiet space. And for some people, that quiet space is best done, for instance, at home. But not everyone has the luxury of having the facilities at home. So we also recognise that for some people, the office is where they like to have that quiet space and have time to get their head down, because it might be less practical in their home environment. So these are all the types of learnings that came out. But it really is that connectivity, that connection, that link to the culture, the link to being a part of a greater organisation, rather than just the set of activities and tasks in your email and your diary and your workflow. That's some of the really rich learnings that came out. We also found that technology, as I mentioned, was an area where we had some learning. So we were very lucky that our IT team, we've got a great IT team, and they'd rolled out laptops to nearly everyone. So everyone was pretty much equipped from day one. And that came through loud and clear from our clients, that we almost didn't miss a beat.
Nice.
But actually, some of the technology we had in our offices needed improving, because it worked okay for if you're all physically in one location. What didn't work well is if some people were perhaps in a different location and some people were in the office. So we're still innovating there. We've tried some new innovative technologies, and some of them are quite powerful, actually. It can almost follow you around the room and spot who's talking even before you start speaking. So there's some amazing technology out there which really helps. But also simple things like the room setup. We've tried lots of different room setups for virtual meetings, and that's been really beneficial as well. I guess in summary, we've been using all of these things as an opportunity to learn. We don't have the perfect answer, the perfect ways of working yet, but we're on the journey and we're open to learning. We're open to learning from the things that go well, but equally open to learning from the things which don't go quite as well as we planned.
Yeah, I think with that mindset and with what you've done of bringing everyone along with you, it really sounds like you're bringing everyone along with you. Then you can, then as long as you're learning together and you keep, it feels it's that experiment mindset and that transition mindset of we hope this will work. If it doesn't work, we'll learn from it and we'll just we'll correct as we go along.
I think that's right, and I think the other learning, just to build on top of that, is being conscious about what you're doing and why you're doing it. So we've deliberately given quite a bit of flexibility in the framework, and that's been well received. However, I think one of the things we're thinking about now is how we're more deliberate in some of our planning. So when we're encouraging people perhaps to come back to the office, we need to give more of a reason to make it worth it to come back to the office. Whereas in the past, it was just the default that everyone was together. Whereas now, actually, we've been focusing on actually what's the reason why people should be or could be getting together? What's the benefit it will bring above and beyond just working in a different way? And so we've tried lots of things there, actually. We actually had a week the other week called the We Connect Week, where actually we were encouraging everyone across our organisation to spend at least one day in one of our offices during the course of that week. And throughout the course of the week, we'd organise various activities. So I think every day between about 10:30 and 11, we'd put on some cakes and tea and coffee and those types of things.
That's the best reason to go back to the office. The cakes, I love it.
And that was really well received. And it wasn't just the cake and the coffee and the tea, but people enjoyed that. It was more just the buzz that was created by a group of people being together and feeling the energy from each other. We've also started some, our management board, members of the management board have started touring our offices now and actually spending a whole day with colleagues. That's in coffee sessions, hearing about some of the news from the office and what's working, what isn't working. That's in lunches, that's in dinners, that's in some sessions where some of the teams are showing us some of the great work that they've been doing. And it's been fantastic to connect properly face-to-face with colleagues. And that's given a reason for people to come in again. And we've had great feedback on that thus far. And we're planning later in the summer. We've got some summer parties coming up. We're not doing that on a whole firm-wide basis quite yet, but that's something we're planning for the future. We're doing it on an office basis. So, for instance, I'm in our London office today. Just by coincidence, actually, there's a few people I needed to catch up with face-to-face, some new joiners who wanted to feel part of the team and wanted to be introduced to other people. So I popped in to make those people feel welcome. But we'll be having a London party in the middle of June. So some of those types of activities. And I think that's kind of, I think people's contract and thinking, as you say, with work has slightly changed, where it was just habitual that the default would be historically for this organisation for people to come into an office, whereas now it's more of a conscious decision and something that requires a bit of planning. So we've also been working through, if people are coming into the office, how do we make sure that their teams are around? How do they make sure that their teams are around? So they're not just coming in, it's an empty office, but they've got their colleagues around, some of the people they want to learn from, they want to share some learning with, some of the people they want to collaborate with. How do people become a bit more deliberate about that planning going forwards?
Yeah. Wow, so much in there. I've got just a question. The week that you had when everyone was encouraged to spend at least a day in the office, could they choose the office they went to, or did it have? Yeah, that's so great as well. Sorry, listeners. David is nodding.
Sorry, that's not very helpful, is it, on a podcast? I acknowledge that.
I have to say, I wish they'd been able to see your face as you were explaining everything, because it's lighting up so much. So that is great that we're saying you're really giving a sense that it's about connecting, like you said, not just to your office and your immediate colleagues, but it's also a chance for you to go to other places and connect physically and in person with colleagues you won't otherwise be seeing in your day-to-day. And the other thing what is it good? Oh, yes. And this question of, for example, you were saying you're visiting the London office and you're taking that opportunity to help people connect, maybe people who are new to the company. And again, knowing that one of your roles as a senior leader is also helping people connect. And by that, you don't just say, come into the office, but actually you've got to then also make the effort of saying, okay, who needs to know whom, who could learn from whom, and using that ability that you know most of your workforce as well for that.
I think that's right. And I think that's, I think everyone needs to learn some new skills. And I'm still learning very much myself, as are other leaders in the organisation. And we've actually got some training, a bit of a training and development programme that we're pulling together for leading and managing hybrid teams. Because it's very different, as you'll know. I mean, you're the expert, and we've benefited from many of your podcasts and all the contributors on there. But it's a very different skill managing a face-to-face team who are pretty much office-based to managing a hybrid team. There are different skills that you need to learn and different ways to connect to people. And so we're developing actually some training for that, which will be rolling out across all our leaders and managers in good time. So that's another thing that we're working on right now.
Something else that came up in the conversation when you're looking at these different levels in which people can connect and the different levels of designing around. So we were talking about the can be as we are using the office less, or as different people are using offices at different times. And again, you've got some flexibility in your framework, that there could be a risk of fragmentation as well. And you talked about designing things and events that are firm-wide versus same location versus business area versus team events. Can you tell us a bit more about that, how you're looking at, while you're giving flexibility to continue working in ways that suits us best, how you're also maintaining a sense of wholeness?
Yes, it's a really good question, Bill. And I think to my mind, it's one of the risks that exists with moving from a traditional office-based ways of working to hybrid, is that you get what I'd call cultural drift over time. Mm-hmm. That by the things you're doing, and everything you do has an impact, but inadvertently and without wanting it, that you lose some of that connection and that culture which has made you so successful in the past. And it's one of the things we're most acutely aware of. And what we've been thinking about is everyone is a member of different teams, aren't they? So I'm a member of the London team, as one example. I'm a member of the partner team. I'm a member of the management board team. I'm a member of my team, and we're actually getting together on Wednesday evening and Thursday this week in person for the second time in the last 2 years, as an example. But we're all a member of different teams in the way we operate. And the question is, given all of that, and given that's kind of quite a complex matrix, where do you form your greatest sense of belonging in an organization? Where do you form your greatest sense of connection in the organization? More often than not, that's your immediate team. But then your immediate team gives you a certain amount of connection. But how do you then connect to the broader organization? How do you connect to the broader culture? And so we're thinking about our plans for connection at all those different levels, not just one or the other. But it's quite a complex matrix, as I say, and
yes,
it's worth thinking through how you create those different levels. So, for instance, last Thursday, and again, this is one of those more deliberate actions, we had actually some face-to-face evening drinks in our London office, and that day our office was nearly full for the first time in 2 years. We had only 2 desks free at one point during the day, but today, actually, a lot more people are working flexibly today. So, and that's okay. Actually, I think it's about getting that right balance that works best for colleagues and also clients.
And I'm thinking also that it'll be a question of adjusting as well to what it feels like now to be in the offices of our company and our organization. And that will take time as well, just to, like you say, whereas before we might have a similar experience regarding the environment every day, now it will be different, and we just adjust as we're coming along, and that might change, like you say. It might change in the near future. It might change as we change teams, as we progress through our career, as we as individuals change. But I think it's really interesting the way that you're looking at all these different levels, and again being very, very intentional about it. Yeah. So is there anything else we need to talk about of what some of the changes you've been making or some of the things that you're trying out?
No, as I say, we've made quite a few changes thus far. We're still on a journey. We're still testing lots of things, ways of working. We're still refining. We're refining our technology. We're going to be adapting our facilities as well slightly. We've got more training in the pipeline. But I think if anything, the experiences of the last 2 years, in my mind, and this is a personal view now as opposed to just an organizational view, I think hybrid is here to stay. And you can try and resist it. And there are some companies out there who are trying to resist it, or you can embrace it. And I think actually, if you embrace it and you do that well and you get that right, I think that you're going to create a sustainable competitive advantage. Because I think for everyone, the experiences of working more flexibly that were forced upon us during the pandemic have indelibly marked our psyches, and we can't get away from that now. So actually, you might as well embrace it and think, how do we get to the best possible place we can for the future?
Excellent. Well, David, it's been such a pleasure. I will ask you if you have any more final words, because the last thing I want is to not give you the final words. I think that wraps it up very nicely around our case study. So the website, if you want to check out what David's company looks like, it's barnett-waddingham.co.uk. Of course, we'll put the link in the show notes. If you want to connect with David, it's David Stoddard. You can look for him on LinkedIn. And I'll give you the last words. Anything else you want to say to our listeners, David?
Yeah, well, once again, Pilar, huge thanks to you for the invitation. I hope it's been useful.
Oh, yes.
Please do get in contact if you've got any questions. And if you are embarking on the journey, would really encourage you, as we've hopefully covered today, to involve your people in your future ways of working, involve your clients. Don't expect to get it right all at once and to be perfect. Continue improving, but absolutely build something that you think is the best it can possibly be for the long term, something that's built to last, something that's really fit for the future, something that's enduring, something that's evergreen.
A big thank you for listening to the 21st Century Work-Life podcast produced by Virtual Not Distant. If you have something to add to the conversation, let us know through the contact form over at virtualnotdistant.com. I have been your host, Pilar Orti, and I'm signing off now. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, enjoy.